How y'all doing? It's great to be here. Thanks for having us today. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the origin of Etsy. For those of you who don't know about the company, we'll talk a little bit about how it works, and then we'll get right into the questions. So we'll try to keep this speedy. So are the slides up right now somewhere? Am I just blind and missing them?
I think they're above you. Yeah.
Do you see them up there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like this. I couldn't see it. Gotcha. All right. We're rolling. So I'm going to take you back to this neighborhood in Brooklyn. It's Fort Greene, Brooklyn. This is where 8 years ago Etsy had its birth. At the time, I was living with this guy, Rob Kalin, pictured here. I was a full-time musician and a screen printer with Rob. We had a screen printing business together. Rob spent his time making furniture, taking photographs, painting pictures, and finishing his 5th attempt at college. And it's actually a pretty amazing story from this time. This is how Rob got into the web world. He had no money, like a lot of creative people who've probably been in this position. And he went down to our landlord's office, which was across the street from our apartment, to say that he couldn't pay the rent. And on our landlord's desk, there was a proposal for a website for a restaurant that our landlord owned. And it was exactly twice the amount of money that Rob owed. And he's like, I'll make your website for half that amount of money. And the guy's like, deal. He's like, okay, good. I'll do that instead of rent. But the first thing Rob did was go out and buy a book on HTML and teach himself how to make websites. So the whole story of Etsy is really one of do-it-yourself. It's not a story of business people being like, we think there's a lot of market opportunity in the craft sector. It was just more about creative people coming together with an idea. So Rob was making these handmade wooden computers at the time. And since he was, an expert on the building websites now, he wanted to sell these and build himself an e-commerce website. But, when he looked around, he saw that all his friends were makers too. Everybody was making something, and everyone was struggling to make a living doing it. And there wasn't really a good place to sell that stuff online. I mean, there was eBay, but eBay, isn't really the best venue if you care a lot about the things that you're selling. So he wanted some place that was more beautiful, that had more soul. So rather than just build his own website, he built Etsy.com. So Randy's going to tell you a little bit about Etsy now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So this is Etsy of today, not the Etsy that launched in 2005, although the mechanics are very similar. So the way that Etsy works is any creative person anywhere in the world can open their own store. And what it takes to open your own store is to list a single item. It costs 20 cents US to list that item, and that gets the item in the marketplace for 4 months. When that item sells, and only when that item sells, Etsy takes a small percentage, 3.5% of that transaction. And that's Etsy's basic business model. 20 cents to list an item, 3.5%. Now today, there are over 800,000 stores from over 150 countries. And those stores are selling handmade items, or also small-scale craft production. About 20% of the marketplace are vintage items, which we classify as items more than 20 years old. And then also people are able to buy and sell supplies for making things, art, craft supplies, and materials for other small-scale manufacturing. So we've been growing. You may have heard, if you're familiar with Etsy, or if you're not, I can share with you that since 2005 to today, I mentioned we have over 800,000 sellers. Just last month, we had over 50 million unique visitors to our website, 1.8 billion page views. And then we were just at a lunch upstairs, and someone had asked us a few questions. And between lunch and here, I got an email from one of our team members with some updated stats, so I thought I'd share with you. Through September of this year, $589 million worth of merchandise sales on the site. And of course, we have not yet entered the holiday season, which is our busiest year. So just to remind you, we take only 3.5% of that. So over 96% of that money this year, probably close to $900 million, goes back to these 800,000 creative, independent businesses around the world. So I think we'll turn it over to Jim now. I think he's going to poke and prod us with some interesting questions about Etsy, how we've made it this far, and maybe what's up next.
Great, yeah.
Thank you
for giving some background. Please take your seat at the... And I'd like to invite Gijs also, you've seen him before, the chief editor of Emer's, to see if we can throw you some curveballs.
Very good.
So, first of all, welcome to the Netherlands in two ways. I mean, welcome to Rotterdam, thanks for being with us, but also you've launched a Dutch version of the website this week. It was on the news. And in this rollout, you're not launching country websites, but you're launching the big website with a local flavor. Why is that?
I can take a stab at that. Our approach to internationalization was really one to create a single global experience for Etsy. We thought for our sellers, for the artists on the site, they wanted access to global markets. For shoppers, it's great if you can buy vintage clothing from France, like new design from Brooklyn, whatever it may be. So we want both buyers and sellers to have access, but we want people to access the site in ways that are comfortable for them. Right. So if you don't speak English, it's not comfortable to navigate the site, in another language. So, in English. So the approach was one to do that, but of course there are some local aspects to it, right? We're going to favor products that are within the EU or within the Netherlands. Right. We're not going to show you things that don't ship to you. That's a bad experience. But we think that the overall Etsy experience is pretty uniform around the world.
Right, and nobody wants to start with an empty database.
Right.
Right, and how many of the transactions are actually overseas? Do you know that?
About 30% of transactions involve one party that's not in the US. Right. So the US is still by far our biggest market, but a big focus of the company is expansion outside of the United States.
Sure, so you had Hello Etsy in Berlin, now the Netherlands. What's next? Are you going to France, Spain, China?
Not China, but both France and Spain, certainly.
So Etsy is currently available in now 4 languages: English, this week Dutch, German, and French. And before the end of the year, we'll also launch in Spanish and Italian. And next year in about 8 other languages. We've taken a different approach as we've learned about our internationalization. So originally, we built some quite sophisticated translation management software ourselves, and we've grown out that infrastructure. And now we've turned it over to trusted people in the community and have embraced a community translation model. So in new markets, we've actually reached out to people within the Etsy community.
Speakers are doing this.
Exactly.
Yep.
So
right.
everyone has always been a local native speaker that was doing translation, but for the first 2 languages we launched, French and German, we hired them. They worked internally with us and from those countries to translate. Now we've enlisted the support of people from the community who have an interest in having the Etsy experience in their own local language. And what's fascinating is we're seeing interest from other places that we hadn't considered already. So people saying, I'd like to translate that. So while we may not be entering China as a strategic choice right now, there's certainly people who are interested in having the Etsy experience in Chinese.
Right,
Yeah.
so it's sort of a controlled bottom-up approach. Right,
Yep.
so I'm sure there are questions from the audience. Please make yourself known to one of the 2 or the lovely white ladies. Gijs, do you want to ask something?
Yeah, I'm curious because there are so many marketplaces online, and many companies try to copy eBay, etc. So what makes you guys go? I mean, what makes you thrive then compared to other marketplaces?
We can both probably answer this one, but for me, it's really about the brand that we built. We're very much a values-led business, and we're trying to actually be a force for positive social, economic, and ecological change in the world. We also have, I feel like, meaningful relationships with the people who sell on the site, and they have meaningful relationships with one another. So I think it's, I think at a certain point in its growth, eBay kind of distanced itself from the community that was selling there, and ours has very much been an approach of how do we support that community and help them grow.
So does that mean there's more of a story behind it? That's the reason that you're more successful? It's more like...
I mean, I think it's... one of the reasons is not the story. I mean, I think that people feel an allegiance to the brand because of that. But, it's the communities that they build around the platform, not what we do ourselves. I think also what's sold on Etsy helps with this too, because these are products that people have put a lot of thought and care, and there's a lot of meaning behind these products. So, shopping on Etsy, getting that beautifully hand-wrapped packaged, getting a note from the person behind it, it's like the opposite experience of getting a box from Amazon. This like gray cardboard box, that was like sent to you probably at great like ecological costs. So I feel like it's just more special.
And
And
if
in
you,
Ro-
if you,
yeah,
if, if,
just
you,
one-
if you talk about a community, is this a community that you created, or was it a community that already existed and you facilitated?
So it's a great question. I'd say it's some of both. So this is the interesting thing. Etsy was lucky enough to have a community right from the start. It really tapped into an existing DIY and craft community. Not massive by today's scale at all, but enough to make it a real active experience for all the people who were involved. It wasn't like it went from 0 to 800,000. It's like it went from 2,000 to 800,000.
Right.
And the difference between 0 and 2,000 is quite a lot for those first 2,000 people.
Yep.
So in that sense, there was an existing community. What we've done since then in a variety of ways, from very sort of technology-driven product ways, but also very high-touch, face-to-face, personal interaction ways, is look at things that are successful in the community and help more of that happen. And then look at things that are successful in the community and try to help them happen in other parts of the community. So maybe there's a community of people sharing tips and resources about how to screen print T-shirts. Here's where you get supplies. Here's how you ship them. Here's how you can package them. Sharing that information. We say, what if we can get jewelry makers to share similar kinds of information with each other in their product categories? So it's a combination of natural, organic things happening within the community, and then us identifying those same things and trying to encourage their growth in various ways.
I think just one other thought on that too is I think Etsy tapped into a larger cultural shift that was happening anyways around the world, regardless of whether we were here or not.
The shift being do-it-yourself movement?
Well, I think people being disconnected from things, from people, from the products in their lives,
Right.
and craving more meaningful interactions and more authentic connection. So I think that, you look at the number of farmers markets has increased something by like 10,000% in the last few years. And I think a lot of these movements, like local movements, or, if you look even like, Walmart or Pizza Hut, they're all trying to talk about like local or handmade or meaningful. Like there's a story behind every product at Walmart. Like it's a very sad story, but they're still trying to tell one. So I think that they're trying to tap into something that's, inherent in all of us. And I think Etsy does it, but it's for real.
Right.
Yeah, you talked about the use that's driven by communities that sell that are in a certain domain or a certain space at Etsy. What do you guys do yourself to drive use to push it? Do you do anything, or is it just let the community?
You mean like
work?
marketing, or?
Well, marketing is it depends on what you understand. What marketing means for you. But what do you guys, what's your company or your team, what do they do to drive the use of Etsy or to grow it?
Sure. Well, I'll mention a couple of things, and Randy, please feel free to jump in. Sure. Of course, one of the best things we can do for our community is bring lots of buyers to the site, right? There's, we very much see the success of the sellers as our success, right? If they don't sell things, we don't make any money. So we need to make them successful. So of course, we do marketing, right? We do try to drive traffic to the site. We do, AdWords, these kinds of things. But we also focus a lot on trying to build this community and connect them together. So we have something called teams, which are groups of sellers organized by location or interest. And I think there's around 280,000 team members around the world. And so, for example, there's a Dutch team scattered across the Netherlands. But they're regularly hosting events or meeting up together, and they'll share information, share tips. So I feel like they are also marketing their own products. And so to me, it's like Etsy grows mostly by giving people the means and the desire to bring more people to the site. So the means are the tools that we can offer, the connections to Facebook, and we have all of these social elements to Etsy. But the desire comes, I think, one, from their own economic interest, but also from building a brand that people care about.
We talked about growth, and startups are all about growing and looking for growing pains, perhaps, if the crafts, if this handmade element is woven into the DNA, do you see that as a sort of conflict of interest? If you really want to expand, then you could be tempted to sell machine-made items as well, because that would be a growth market.
Sure, you could be tempted to do that, but
Yeah.
we're not. And it's an interesting thing to say that, because it's a very clear alignment with values that we've established as important for ourselves.
So you are tempted?
No, I said one could be.
Yes.
We are not. And Matt can speak more to those values. I'll let him speak to that. But what I think backs that up from a business standpoint, like why that isn't just me, some crazy idealistic person saying we would never do that, is that there is still massive growth potential in what we are doing right now, both in the categories and the sellers that we are working with currently. So that's in existing sellers selling more. There is capacity for that, more in some categories than others, and we work with them to help figure out ways for them to sell more efficiently, sell more things. Additional sellers in those same categories, as well as new product types and new opportunities for connections between these independent creative people and other people looking to buy products or potentially services or other goods from them. So there's a massive amount of growth potential in areas that align with our values, without saying, yeah, let's sell stereo equipment. Let's sell, this is just not of interest to us, and it's okay that it's not of interest because there's still this other business opportunity.
There's enough room to grow to stay
Absolutely.
true to your own
Absolutely.
DNA. And what if I, as one of the 800,000 makers, try to sell something that's machine-made on Etsy? Is that, how is that filtered?
So it happens a few different ways. One, we're very large. Like the community is very big. So the community can flag sellers and items as various things in violation of our policy or mislisted or any of these things. So for what you're describing, that would probably be the first thing that happens. And because of the scale we have and the volume of this activity, very quickly, hundreds of flags. So we can look at those signals and say, okay, the velocity of new flags is, then we investigate it, human beings investigate, and we say, yes, that's accurate. Depending on the nature of those things, in the rare cases when they're fraudulent or something, we just shut them down automatically. In the case where it's a person who doesn't understand Etsy's policies, or we're violating them without knowing, we reach out to them directly and we have a human conversation with them and help them understand either how to comply with our policies or why they aren't able to sell those things on the marketplace.
A human conversation.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah,
Real
yeah.
people. We also have machines who are intelligent that prevent certain things from even getting on the site too. So we look at there's a whole special sauce of stuff to flag things preemptively that seem like they might be amiss in some way.
And in the end, you put more trust in a human than in a machine.
Yeah,
That's
for sure.
the whole
Because
point,
there's a lot of gray areas in these things.
Talking about human conversations, I see we have a question from the audience. Could you please say your name and ask your question?
I'm Arthur from Seeds. I'm wondering, how do you manage the balance between the Etsy experience and the huge scale that you're achieving, both for the seller and the buyer?
Let's say for both of them, once they're at Etsy and sort of engaged in the Etsy experience, whether it's on your iPhone or on our site, that's really about the product experience that we've created. Now, in some cases, there's the merchandising of items within that experience, so how certain things are promoted or framed based on seasonality or shopping trends or whatever other things may be the case in different categories. That helps create the kind of aesthetic experience that a person would expect to have with Etsy, even as we scale. But also, we take a certain approach to how we frame that content, a really kind of, from the design discourse, there's this idea of the crystal goblet, right? Which is to really respect the content, and that the content is the most important thing. So while it's important that people know they're at Etsy or they have a consistent quality experience, when they're engaged with a seller or a particular item, the most important thing is the photography and the description of that item that someone's added, or the way that they want to present themselves as a seller. So we always try to elevate those things before us ourselves, and that ends up, Etsy ends up being a collection of those parts of the experience.
What was the most expensive item that's ever been sold?
That's a great question.
Good question. I don't know. Every week there's usually something around $15,000 to $25,000 that sells. It's always an engagement ring.
Right.
Always from a diamond dealer, like diamond dealers in New York City. So, there have been some outlandish things, like
Sure.
that have sold, but we never are really sure if it's real.
That's interesting with the Dutch market, because Arthur is from Seeds.nl. It's a crowdfunding platform, so you guys should talk.
We should talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Any people from Marktplaats aanwezig in de zaal? I'd like to hear some questions for Marktplaats if they are...
There's some
I know they're at eDay, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so could we get a mic to that person in front?
Put him on the spot. Sorry, I was dissing eBay before. I don't actually mean it. Anything personal with mine.
Sure.
So what do you guys know of Marktplaats?
They're owned by eBay, right?
Yes.
That's all I know.
That's
No, it's kind of like a classifieds, maybe.
Secondhand primarily, yeah.
Yeah. So is it on?
It is on.
We hear you.
Well, welcome to the Netherlands.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for you. What exactly is your strategy? How are you going to approach it? How are you going to build the organization?
What
So
market
if you can
share do you
elaborate on that.
what do you think?
It would be great.
Welcome to the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Let's do one question at a time. What is your most important question? Strategy?
Well, how are you going to build your presence here? And what is your
Hostile
vision
takeover of
on,
eBay.
Got it.
on that?
No, I was kidding.
Thank you.
I mean, in the Netherlands in particular, I mean, everywhere really, we have to, any new market we enter, we have to focus first on building the artist community, helping get sellers onto the platform, but also help them be successful. We also have to just raise the general awareness of Etsy in markets where we're not so well known. So, of course, press, PR, marketing events. We're doing a big event as part of Dutch Design Week in Eindhoven this weekend. And yeah, just pounding the pavement and trying to build a brand that people want to tell other people about.
Do you think you're a competitor to Marktplaats and eBay, or is it something completely different you're doing?
I mean, in the sense that like they're both platforms where people sell things, yes, but I actually think of eBay, Marktplaats, any of these things as potential partners too, because if we think of ourselves as a platform for small businesses or these independent creative businesses, then we should help them be successful on Marktplaats. We should help them be successful on, whatever any other competitor may be. So, yeah, I don't really worry about the competition in a traditional way.
Are you satisfied?
And
or?
you?
Yeah.
I think competition is good in general. So
Yeah, and
again,
we will
welcome.
crush you.
Wait until the meet and greet afterwards, please.
I'm just kidding.
I'd like
He's
to.
getting honest.
Yes, he is. I'd like to talk about money for a second. As I said, welcome to the Netherlands. You've been around since 2005. How much money did you guys raise with fundraising?
Ooh, good. We've done 5 rounds. What's the total? I don't know. Around $100 million, maybe.
$100 million.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
So Etsy became profitable in mid-2009. And since then, we raised $40 million last year. Not for operating costs at all. We've been profitable ever since, but for
How are you spending the money?
for international expansion, and for we're building out a payments platform, as you may or may not have heard. That is actively
You're building
in
your
use right
own
now.
payments platform?
We built
correct.
it,
We've
yeah.
built it. It exists.
Why build it if stuff exists?
Because it's, no offense to eBay, like a clunky experience from our site to then go to PayPal and finish out that thing. So we wanted to create a more seamless product experience. It allows us to do things like create gift cards, which we just launched in the United States. It allows us to just do a lot more with the experience and have that element of it. I mean, and then, it's a potential business model
Right.
at some level too.
So what's the percentage of that money you put in marketing, and what's the percentage you put in technology?
We don't spend a lot on traditional marketing. It's never like we are spending more than we've ever spent on traditional marketing this year. But it's not like I don't have a set percentage. I don't actually know how much we're going to spend in general.
When we talk about international expansion in this sense, this is about hiring and supporting people in each one of these markets. And our version of marketing, although we do some traditional marketing and advertising, is primarily community development and talking directly with people. And like any company, sort of headcount or personnel is our single biggest expense, and that's true for international expansion and our payments platform as well.
Yeah, I mean, and things like bandwidth are expensive now. It costs millions and millions of dollars just to keep Etsy going, and we operate on a very small margin. So, it actually something that I'm very proud of, that we create a lot more value than we take from the world, but we can still employ 400 people, be profitable, build a business on a very small margin.
Right, and at eDay, a lot of startups are present. Are you looking for partners, for new ideas, for brilliant people to help you with this expansion?
Always looking.
Right, so startups, you've heard it. They're at the meet and greet afterwards. If you could give the audience one piece of last advice, because we're running over time right now, what would it be? What is the advice for any startup right now? And I'll let the two of you answer
go
this.
first?
Sure. So I'll answer from the product side personally. I think that the single most important thing that a early stage startup can do is optimize for change in the product, to make it easy to change the experience in the product, to make it easy to test and learn in the product, to not treat any one early decision as too precious, and to not become over-invested in them. So you can learn by getting real things out in the world as early as possible,
Right.
And then deciding what to do with that information as you collect it.
Right, like Gijs said, fail often, right?
Fail fast.
Yeah.
Fail fast,
fast.
sorry. Okay.
Fail forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say kind of along those lines. I think that the biggest impediment to success for a lot of businesses is fear. It's usually their own fear that, of doing something differently than it's been done before, or that they'll fail, or whatever it may be. So I think if you can be fearless in your life, it's hard to do, but you'll go places.
That is great advice. Be fearless and fail fast. Right. So I think those two go hand in hand. I really appreciate you guys coming all the way to Netherlands to talk to us. You're going to the meet and greet. That's in the green zone where the igloos and the domes are. So you can pat them on the shoulder and ask them all sorts of questions, including questions about their strategy and their market size. So please give them a big hand, Randy and Matthew.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.